This was originally going to be a live stream, but due to some technical difficulties, that didn't quite happen the way that I planned it to. So, what you're going to have now is a very nice pre recorded interview that I did with Lori Sims of Not Your Kids and Elliot Katz, who's an author on an excellent book on manhood and leadership. I interviewed him some years ago on my Blog Talk radio show. I'll try to find that interview and put that up as well at some point soon. But this is a great opportunity for those of you who are parents of children or you're dating someone who is a parent to get an idea of what two experts and people who have both been in a situation that we're discussing of stepping into co-parent or having children that will be involved with a person that you get involved with. So they have some great insight into what's going on out here in the singles dating world for people that have children and trying to make a blended family situation work well for all parties concerned. I think this is especially important in the United States when we have such a large number of divorces and single parent homes, which involve second marriages and sometimes even third marriages for many people. The children are involved in that, and the parents need some help in figuring out how to negotiate these ups and downs and basically the roller coaster of finding someone, dating someone, getting your children's approval, working out all the kinks, and making the relationship a happy and successful one. So that's what's on the show agenda for today. I will see you guys tomorrow, and we'll work on all the problems so that we don't have this problem again. See you soon. Bye bye. So what I want to do, in spite of all these technical difficulties with YouTube today, is introduce my two guests. We're here to talk about how to effectively co-parent in this era where there's so many single parent homes and people, they're dating people with children, or they have children, their new mate has children, and they're trying to figure out how to blend those families and deal with the exes and deal with the children and deal with each other's habits and belief systems and the children's habits and behavior problems. And so there's a lot going on. So with me today, I have Elliot Katz and I have Lori Sims. I'm going to let each one of them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their expertise in this area. Let's start with you, Elliot.
Hi, I'm Elliot Katz. I live in Toronto, Canada. I was married and then got divorced, and I'm a single parent of two adult daughters, and it was a real challenge dating while having two children. They weren't adults; they were little kids, and I learned a lot about the role of a man and when he's trying to date women and he has children of his own. It's a challenge. But,
I bet.
Riley, I'm also the author of a book called Being the Strong Man a Woman Wants, Timeless Wisdom, Being a Man. I'll show it to you here. And this is really sort of a compilation of all the lessons I learned about, not about children, but really about what it means to be a man and show leadership and take responsibility for what's going on in the relationship. And especially when you're dating and you have children and it's, you really have to take responsibility. And we'll talk more about it, like some of my experiences with my kids and women I dated.
Oh, I can't wait to hear. Okay, and Lori?
I don't know if I can follow up with that. I think we just want to hear your story, Elliot, and the women you dated. I'm Lori Sims, and about 6 years ago, my husband and I started what is called Nacho Kids, and it is to help blended families that are struggling in the blend to understand that it's okay not to fit the stereotypical, publicly defined role as a stepmother. There's a lot of slack with it. There's a lot of pressure put on these women that they do not need. The role is the person's kid that they are. Put the parenting back to the parent and build a bond with the stepkids instead.
That sounds really good. I got, it was really interesting. I got a letter into my advice column last week from a young man who was having some problems accepting his new girlfriend's son, a 2-year-old child, that he said he described himself as feeling all this rage and anger because he didn't want his girlfriend to have a child by someone else, but obviously she does, and you knew that when you got with her. So Elliot, I mean, what
Yeah.
does a guy do in a situation? I'm going to get you too, Lori. What
Okay,
does
I'm
a guy
sorry.
do in a situation like that?
You know
What
that.
is his best move?
You know what? I mean, are they married and living together? Because really, if he
No.
has rage, then it's not meant to be. And if I've seen this both ways with men who are upset with the attention that a woman will pay to her children, or a woman that gets jealous or resents the attention that a father pays to his children. If you're in that situation, it's my advice. It's not meant to be. And one of the things that people ask is, when's the right time to introduce your children to like a significant other? And I say, once you decide that you're serious with this person, you hear this advice: wait 6 months. I have a good friend. He was going with a girl for like 4 or 5 months, and he liked her a lot. So he introduced her to his 4 kids, and 2 days later she broke up with him, and he couldn't understand why. I said nothing happened. I said because she couldn't handle the thought that you would be paying all this attention to your kids. So you know what? It's the right thing, because you hear about a situation where people get married and then they try to push the kids out of the person's life.
Right.
You know what? If the person isn't ready to accept it, it's not meant to be. And don't try to put a square peg in a round hole. Get someone who want, and like being a single parent, I've met women who like the idea that I have children because they don't have children of their own. And say they want to be part of a family. They want to be part of raising these children. That's the person you need. If there's resentment, just clear out. It's not meant to be. That's
What do
my
you say,
advice.
Lori? What would your advice have been to that young man?
Considering that the child is only 2, it concerns me greatly. I can understand if it's a teenager talking back to him, just being disrespectful, but a 2-year-old, if he has rage toward a 2-year-old, I agree completely with Elliot that it's best for them just to cut ties and leave, because it's not healthy for anybody involved.
Yeah, they'd only been, he said, his girlfriend of 1 month.
Oh,
So,
no. Bye. Bye.
I have to say
so for
goodbye.
both of you
Exactly.
agree that that was a little soon for her to be introducing him to the
I
child?
think we should, yeah, I think we should have some little red flags to hold up, Elliot. What do you think?
I agree. I don't think it's too early, because I think it's good that it was done now, because now she sees this is not meant to be. And you haven't invested 6 months and say, oh, well, I've invested all this time and I like him so much and I've really grown attached to him. Well, he'll learn to love my kids. They'll learn to get along. You know what? That's what I tell people. Do it early. As soon as you like this person, you see them as a significant other, introduce them and see what happens. And if it, because this is important. It's like it's just as important. Everything else you look, you're looking at a person, deciding if they're for you. If they're not comfortable with your kid, just say, you know what, it's not meant to be, and move on to someone who will appreciate that child and will be happy and say, I want to be part of this family. I want to be part of raising children. That's what you need.
Okay. And what did you say,
I s-
Lori? Oh, did Lori freeze?
It looks like it.
Oh, no. Well, we'll have to get back to her then. So Elliot, oh, there she is. Lori, your
I'm
your
sorry.
camera froze, so we missed whatever you were going to say there.
Okay, did you me to start over?
Well, yeah, sorry, that was when I said, well, Lori, what do you have to say? And then you just went,
Okay. I think a lot of times it does depend on how serious the relationship is, but you can't jump boyfriend to girlfriend month to month and introduce these people to your kids as your boyfriend or your girlfriend. It can be a friend, but if they see you moving people in and out like that, that's your boyfriend and girlfriend, they're going to have trouble getting attached to people, because kids can get attached so quickly.
I think another thing that concerns me is, I keep hearing stories about various kinds of abuses when the mothers, trust these quote boyfriends too quickly without properly vetting these guys. And, from physical abuse to sexual abuse, it's pretty horrific. The stories that are going on, some of the kids even end up dead. So, that's why I was looking for, if you had any real solid guidelines for coaching these women that are single parents. You have to look for certain things or certain, I don't know, I don't even know what I'm trying to say, but the statistics around this are really bothersome.
Well, all I can say, I think that a man who, that kind of man, he gets off warning signs because he probably treats his girlfriend similarly in a bad way. So, she's just got to smarten up. And I don't think a man that treats his girlfriend, like a real gentleman would abuse a child. So I think there's signs already before he gets to be with that child that, this person is trouble. I don't know. What do you think, Lori?
I think how they treat their mother has a lot to say about how they will treat their girlfriend or wife, and then the kid as well. There are signs when people are just not compassionate, and you have to have somebody that's understanding and compassionate when there's a small child involved.
I see.
And it's not for everybody, that's for sure. But like we said, a month, no, I wouldn't even waste my breath asking that question. I would just use that energy and go.
Yeah, he seemed like he really liked this girl, but the quickness with which they got involved and the risk, I don't know, it just gave me the willies just to hear him express his anger at this child, and then to go back and forth. But the kid is really sweet. But then I don't want her to have a child that wasn't by me. But then, so he was really flipping back and forth. It just seemed like a very high risk situation to me. And I thought that there's probably, if he's willing to talk about this, probably something that other people are wrestling with too, and just hadn't really written. So I thought I would throw that out there for you too, to give your opinions on.
And I'll tell you, I'm not one to normally tell people to leave, especially, if they're living together and a kid's involved or they're married, and, don't give up. That's my thing, because you can make things better. But he's having issues straight off the bat, and he needs to figure that out. It's not that this kid's going to go away. And in 5 years down the road, if she has to cancel something because the kid has a kindergarten graduation, is he going to be mad about it? If so, then don't get involved.
I got you. Well, let's talk about that. Let's, differences in, say we have two people, and, there's Elliot with this nice woman, and she has two children, and he has his two children, and they have different parenting styles. But, there's some discussion about the relationship being serious and possibly leading to marriage. What are your recommendations for how those people should discuss their differences in parenting style and negotiate something that's going to be good for this new family they're putting together?
Well, I think, it's an interesting question. I think it's more of a discussion, more than like observing the other person. Like, how different are your parenting skills? Because the other person is very liberal and lets them do anything, and let's say the father's very strict. You're going to have problems because the kids are going to be in conflict with each other. So I think first step is to observe how different is the other person than me, and most likely they are different because people are different when it comes to parenting. And then really sit down and come up with a plan. I mean Lori, I think you probably have more experience in that area than coaching people. I'd be interested to hear what you have to say.
Well, it's really interesting. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we hear you fine.
Okay, you froze up on me. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, we hear you fine.
Okay, I got sidetracked. What were we talking about?
Negotiating parenting styles or the discussion.
Even in, not blended families, but nuclear families, you have parents that don't necessarily agree with the way that they parent. So that's an issue regardless of the home most of the time. But my husband and I took 100 questionnaire thing from the church before we got married, and a lot of it was on parenting. Some of it was finances. Some of it was parenting. Some was finances. It covered a whole gamut of things. But we had one answer that was different. And then 2.5 years later, our marriage is going to crap. Because what happens is we think we should parent a certain way, but the reality of it is, especially in blended families, you've got the guilty parent syndrome. they call it guilty dad syndrome. I don't know why, because women have it too. But I have it. My son goes to his dad's every other weekend and like a week during the summer. So it's not a lot. It's not 50-50, but I still have that guilt. You don't want to fuss at them before they go somewhere. You know, even though you know they need to be reprimanded for what they did, it changes the whole scheme of things. And so the parenting thing is really hard. And we have learned the best thing to do is to let the bio parents do the parenting. You can come up with agreed upon house chores, rules, and consequences, but the bio parent is to enforce those if they're present. If not, then the step parent can. But you have to allow them to parent like they want to, because they're their kids. You can't make somebody parent like you think they should.
Well, what if that causes conflicts? Okay, now here you are with your two children, and your children have to do chores, and your children have to do things, by the clock, and do things. They're a little more regimented and disciplined, and you don't allow talking back. You're at home by a certain time. I need to know where you are and who you're with. I want to meet your parents. And the other parent, the kids may be close in age. It's like, oh, whatever, just do whatever. Okay, then these kids are seeing this difference. I mean, won't that cause some kind of problems between the parents? And if you just like if I was with somebody and that's how they parented their kids, I would lose my mind, because I couldn't handle that.
Right. The thing is, my expectations and what I want my child to grow up to be is not based on how my husband parents his kids. It's based on what I expect out of my son. I expect him to make straight A's. I expect him to be respectful, say yes ma'am, or tell me if he's going somewhere, not just run out the door like crazy. If my significant other's kids do that, if my stepkids want to be disrespectful to me, then I just don't engage in conversation with them and let their dad deal with it. And yes, it causes conflict, but again, if you go back to a nuclear family, I had two sisters, an older sister and a younger sister, and my parents parented us all differently.
Really?
Yeah, different consequences work for different kids. To me, you could holler at me and it would break my heart. Oh my God. My sister, you could beat the snot out of her and it wouldn't faze her. And my other sister, you threatened to whip her and, she'd run away. Everybody's different. You have to figure out the child and what they can do. But as far as the blended family, we really found that the chore charts help, the house rules. And if, for instance, my husband was leaving, he would say, okay, I'm leaving. While I'm gone, Lori's in charge of enforcing the house rules and consequences. And, with technology today, there's no reason that a dad cannot parent his kids, even if he's not physically present.
That's true. What do you, Elliot, what's your take on, like, say if you, were a guy and you came into a situation where the woman had some sons that were a bit unruly, and you're now the man of the house, and they're looking to you for this leadership and guidance on how to become a young man. What would be your approach?
Well, it's a difficult situation, because I know I have a friend who was in that situation, married a woman who had two kids, and they made his life hell. and after 2 years he just bailed out because he couldn't. The kids were so disrespectful. And I think the most important thing is to you have to have your spouse's support, right? Because otherwise I'll just keep saying, well, you're not my dad. I don't have to listen to you. And I just want to make a comment about Lori's comment about what you call dad's guilt. Is that what you called it? Or
Guilty dad syndrome.
Guilty dad syndrome. I mean, I experienced that, and I remember my first girlfriend after my marriage ended. She's a wonderful person, but my kids were so resentful of her. She was a very nice person, but I guess they felt that if they could just get rid of her, they would get their parents back together. I mean, I'm just they do movies about this stuff.
Hey, it worked. It worked.
In the movie.
No, I mean, it worked. They got rid of her, didn't they?
Oh, they did, yeah. But I wanted her though.
Yeah.
I mean, but that was the situation, and the situation was especially like right at the beginning, and like you're so afraid that if you come down hard on them, they're going to not want to come see you, and it's a really horrible situation. And I realized that I was failing them as a father. That really my job is to teach them how to behave properly, how to behave in this world as a decent human being. And by letting them treat this woman so disrespectfully, like, splashing her with water and sicking a dog on her.
Get out of
I should
here.
laugh about it, but no, I can't. But I mean, I don't blame her for bailing out. I mean, it was horrible, but it was really my responsibility. But my point is, you know, you're failing your children if you don't teach them the proper way to behave, and that they have to treat. You want them to treat everyone respectfully, and this is your girlfriend, and they have to treat her respectfully, and but it's really underlying that syndrome is really the fear of, like, well, they won't want to come see me. They're going to resent me, and it's
I only get half the time with them now as it is, and so really, if they've got 5 years till they move out, you've only got 2.5 to instill your morals in your kids.
Right.
Yeah,
So it's not an easy
It's
situation.
bad.
It's not a situation you're put in the middle, and I think it's the same thing with, in a blended family where there's conflict between, let's say, the others, your spouse and your children, and they both come to you, and it's like you're in the middle. It's not easy. It's not an easy situation.
Oh boy. Well, I'm glad we're being so candid here, because I'm sure a lot of people are going to be like me and go, what in
It's
the
the
world?
truth. Like you said, you're stuck in the middle, and I laugh because David always does his face all squished up.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's Lori driving me crazy about my kids not doing something. Here's my kids driving me crazy because, Lori's telling them to do stuff that they don't think she should be telling them. And here's my parents telling me things, so he's just like in a box, and he said he just wanted out. It didn't matter how he got out. And so you've definitely got to look at everything. This is not easy at all.
So what do you okay, so say, you meet this person and it's all fabulous and wonderful. And then you start thinking about, what are the things that people should be looking for to know if the person that they're involved with is a good person to move forward with when there are children involved or not? Are there any red flags that we should be looking for that come to mind?
Well, I think one of the first things is really to just see how they interact with their children. See that they're not jealous of the attention that you pay to them. I've seen that so many times. People complaining, "Oh, he's so obsessed with his kids," but he's not being obsessed. He's being a responsible parent. He's doing his best to raise his children and the best that he can in the circumstances. That's really the first sign, and you see that. You really see I've heard so many stories, like children go to their father and his new spouse, and they just don't feel welcome. They don't want to go over there anymore. I mean, I've seen those situations. So just see how the person acts, and that's why I say don't wait 6 months. Just like when you feel this person is could be that person that you want to get remarried to, like that you want to build on, like introduce your kids and see what happens. Like just see if how they react to each other.
Okay, those are good points. What do you say, Lori?
To me, I didn't want to date somebody that didn't have kids, because I wanted somebody that did, that understood that, if my son's sick, it doesn't matter what we had planned. My son comes first. It doesn't matter, and we're not going to get into the whole discussion of who comes first in a marriage. But, if something comes up with him and his dad couldn't get him for his weekend, I don't care if we were going away to the mountains, I was getting my kid, and it wasn't a discussion, because that is my responsibility. He only has me to take care of him. And so the same thing with my husband. I didn't expect him to ever ask, "Hey, can I get my kids extra?" Things like that. But if you're dating somebody that has kids, or that doesn't have kids and you have kids, and they act like they get all bent out of shape because you have to reschedule because of your kid, they are not the person to be in your life. They will cause you so many problems, and nobody will be happy.
Gotcha. I was wondering too, from what do you think, because we have so many kids now that are growing up with they don't have a good relationship with their father at all, if they have one at all. So, I mean, as these young men and women grow up and start getting out into the dating pool and looking at being married, what kind of impact do you think not having a father figure is going to have on them as far as being able to step into this role as a dad and leader? And for you, Lori, what do you think it's going to do as far as the women's expectations of a man who may have children? So each one of you get a different question.
Well, Deborah, I think you highlighted a very serious problem in our society today. So many kids are growing up without fathers, and really, a father, is a role model to a son. Obviously, a father is a role model of what a man should be, and how a man treats a woman. He learns all these things from his father, and the same thing for a girl. I've read pediatricians say that for a young woman, like a teenager, her father's the most important person in her life, and she really learns about how man should be. Like, you often hear, sometimes women will say, "Well, I married a man just like my father, or he's such a bum." But really, the opposite is true too. I says they look at their father's good qualities, and they want a man who has those good qualities because that's her expectation.
Right.
That was what my father was, and that's what I'm looking for in a man. And there's so many. I mean, I've heard so many very sad stories of young women. They grew up without their fathers, and it's really a sad thing. It's a real loss to them. I think it's a real shame. I just can't understand why, our society as a whole doesn't realize, children need fathers. The parents don't like each other. It doesn't really matter. At least let them have their father, because the father plays such an important role.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm a daddy's girl through and through.
Right
my
here
thing,
too.
I mean, when I first started talking, they asked me what I wanted for Christmas, and I said, my daddy.
Oh.
So he puts this big bow on his head, and that was my present. Of course, I was like, 1 year old. What did I know? But I thought that was pretty funny.
That's precious.
So now your turn, Lori. So now, from your perspective, from the woman's point of view, when she grew up without a dad, how much might that impact her choices in men for when she's looking for someone to remarry and step into that role for her children?
For someone that didn't have a dad growing up?
Yes.
I think anytime you are missing a parental figure, whether it's the mom or the dad, it affects things greatly, of course. But I also think that you can get that manly role model from other people. For instance, uncles, even neighbors. I remember we had a neighbor, not that my dad was absent, but he worked a lot at night, but we had a neighbor that would play cards with me. So I knew how to play crazy eights, and he wouldn't play poker with me because I took all his money. But
my girl, that's what I'm talking about.
And so, I mean, there's different ways to have men as role models in your kids' lives, even if the dad's, not present.
Okay.
Now,
I have another question too, because now we get into the issue of what they used to call, they call it baby mama or baby daddy drama. So here you are, you might have a perfectly wonderful relationship. You get along with your new mate, great. The kids love each other, it's just fabulous. But then you each have an ex, or one of them has an ex that just wreaks havoc from afar. Every time they can make a disturbance in your household, they take that opportunity with gusto. So what do you do? I mean, how should a couple handle something like that? Because those people are very often responsible for a breakup too. It's just like don't want to deal with it anymore. So you start with you, Elliot?
Well, my first thought is find somebody, a new spouse for your ex.
Oh, good plan.
Because that's often what it is. It's resentment that, the marriage didn't work, and now they're out there and they haven't found anyone. So the best thing is once they have a new partner, then they leave you alone. It's
strategist. It's a strategy. I love it. You agree, Lori?
I agree. When somebody doesn't have someone else to focus on in their life, they're going to focus on the ex. I mean, that's a given, whether there's kids involved or not. And the blended family issue, we call it the high conflict bio mom, because usually it's dealing with
that's a nice diplomatic word.
Yeah. It's better than some of the other 4 little abbreviations they come up with. But you've got these people and they're part of your life, but depending on at what level is where you let them be. For instance, I have no contact with my stepkid's mom or my husband's ex. None whatsoever. None. When I say none, I mean none. I do not email her. I do not talk to her on the phone. If my husband has to deal with her, he deals with her. If it's something that affects me, he tells me. Otherwise, it is none of my business. She is his baggage and not mine.
Ooh, okay. Well, she put up some very clear and firm boundaries. That's probably the best way to do it.
Well, you don't have to be their friend. And people think, oh, well, I need her to be my friend. Whether everybody wants to be friends. It doesn't work that way. It's okay not to be friends with people. And it's okay for people not to like you.
I think I would be in my feelings a little bit.
Girl, get out. Hey, you cannot be in a blended family and have feelings.
Oh.
Am I right, Elliot?
No, you're right. You're right. You got to be strong. I mean, you know what? When you get divorced, it's painful, and you got to like develop a thick skin. That's
Yeah.
what
You do.
Okay.
If not, it'll push you down in the ground and leave you crying like a baby on the floor in the bathroom.
Well, I think I would imagine that I would be in my feelings, but most likely I would be to come out roaring like a lion because I have a terrible temper. But I'm just not the one. Let's just not even do this.
Yeah.
So it would more likely be like that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let me see what other question I want to ask you. How involved, because now we heard Elliot's story about how his daughters ran off the woman. But I mean, realistically speaking, how involved should children be in the decision making of, if you go forward to marriage with this person? Do they get any say, or a little bit, or how do you think that should work? What's the best recommendation? Let's start with Lori this time.
Okay. I think it's important that the kids don't start off hating the person that you're looking forward to marrying, but just because they don't hate you that day doesn't mean they won't hate you the next day.
Ooh.
So you have to realize that the kids are kids and their emotions run rampant and they're back and forth with their other bio parent telling them you aren't supposed to like her. Then you've got the whole, loyalty conflict going on. It's a crazy mess of emotions.
And what do you say, Elliot? What's your tips for success here?
I agree with Lori, but one of the situations I've seen, which is interesting, is where a person is like a woman was a widow, and I mean her husband died, and after a couple of years, she got to know a fella that she liked, and they decided to get married, and her children really resented it, and like I thought, well, what do you? I mean, they're not divorced. It's not like this man pushed your father out of the picture. He died. I mean, it's life.
Yeah, he's never coming back.
It's not like your mother's entire. It's not like she's getting married a week later. No, it's several years later. She got over a period of mourning and wanted to get married to this fellow, and it was really interesting. They really resented him. Really, he had nothing to do with their father dying. So, but I mean, obviously, she went ahead and they got married, and eventually the children began to accept him because he's a very decent person. And I think in the same way, thing with blended family, you just show you're a decent person, and hopefully, the children will come around and be positive about it. But I mean, if they really hate each other, it's like it's not going to work. But in a situation where people are reasonable, and it's just an emotional thing, like Lori, like you're saying, it's an emotional thing. So it's
men and women play a completely different role in life in general, but also in the blend. With men, they don't struggle as much. They don't need the support groups on Facebook with 80,000 members. They don't even need a stepdad's day. Men don't have a stepdad's day, but there's a stepmama's day.
Really?
The Sunday after Mother's Day is stepmother's day.
oh,
And you know why? Because women needed that to make them feel important. And so everybody's got this different involvement. And a lot of times the women run in and they're like, oh, let me fix little Johnny's supper and get his clothes ready and play mama to him. And I'm going to be the best stepmom in the world. And then 6 months later, they're mad and they're burnt out because nobody's helping them. And the dads just kick back, letting them take over parenting their kid. You have to set those boundaries straight off the bat. And the best thing we found is letting the step parent come in and treat the kids as they would a friend's kids, not in any parental fashion, unless it, has to do with safety or health or something like that. Otherwise, and everybody hates this, I know I'm going to get backlash for this, but you're the babysitter. That's what you are to these kids. You didn't date them. You didn't take vows to them. You didn't fall in love with them. They didn't fall in love with you. And if they did, it won't last long. So just be prepared. I mean, it's a roller coaster. And I noticed you had said roller coaster somewhere in your thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's what it is. And it does get better, though. You just have to figure out your groove and figure out what works for you, what works for each step kid and your bio kid. I see stepmoms all the time neglect their own kids. Well, not really neglect them, but not pay them as much attention because they're more focused on the bad relationship they have with the step kids. They can't even focus on their own kid or their relationship with their husband.
So do you think, so you're basically saying then that in this kind of situation, the parent that's coming in should approach dealing with these children more like friends, a friendly kind of relationship than a parental one?
Definitely. And then once you start bonding with them, you become more like the cool aunt or the cool cousin, whatever. My stepkids hated me. They wanted to burn me at the stake, and I am not kidding. There were 4 boys, so it was a possibility it could happen. And yeah, instead of triplets in that girl. And so everything was crazy. I'm telling you, we all hated each other. And I know hate is a strong word, but that is how we felt at the time. And now, after I did our little nachoing thing, I started re-engaging slowly, and I've got great relationships with my stepkids. And we even did a video the other day with one of them, and David asked him, my husband David said, what would you view Lori as now, instead of the evil stepmom that you hated and wanted to kill? And he said, as a best friend. Oh, touched my heart. That's when you can have feelings. Yes.
Yeah, I would have got off.
But me trying to parent them was ruining my marriage. They didn't need me. They had a mom and a daddy and grandparents and everybody else telling them what to do. And, looks in, Lori comes in, is taking over, and the evil stepmom is real.
Yikes. So do you agree with that philosophy, Elliot?
Yes, I do. I'm very happy to hear that things worked out so well, Lori. That's great.
So would that have helped, Elliot, if your lady friend had done that, or was it just a hopeless situation?
Well, okay, I think later on that is the kind of relationships I had, that they were good friends with my daughters. But I think that was the first girlfriend, and they just, at that stage, they just thought if they could get rid of her, they could get their parents back together. And no, she was good to them, but it was, no, it was really me. I don't want to say it was hopeless, because it was really me. Like I said, I was afraid of coming on, being a disciplinarian, because I thought, well, they're not going to want to come see me. And it was really up to me just to put an end to it. And I didn't step forward. And that's why I wrote this book about the importance of stepping forward and showing some leadership. But that was my big lesson to learn. It's like I said, you're failing your kids if you just let them run wild and treating a stepmother like Lori, what you're saying, they're going to burn you at the stake. Well,
I was scared. I ain't gonna lie. I slept with one eye open.
It was really your husband's job to say, no, this is, you don't treat anybody this way. Not just my wife. You don't treat anybody this way. That's really the important message they have to learn.
It is. And something we have to realize is it's hard for everybody involved. It's not just hard for me. It wasn't just hard for my husband. It wasn't just hard for his kids or my kid or his ex or the in-laws. I mean, nobody knows what to do. Everybody tries to force blended relationships or step families, whatever you want to call them, into being nuclear families, and they're not. And it's okay that they're not. Let these bonds form naturally. They're not your kids. You didn't birth them. Legally, you don't have any ties to them. There's nothing there. You don't have that bond like they do with their parents. And you have to let them learn to trust you and to know who you are. And like Elliot said, just be kind. If you are genuinely a kind person, people aren't going to hate you for no reason. Don't give them reasons to hate you. Just back up. We don't have to interject in everything as a step parent.
So do you think in a situation like this, is it better when the children are younger, or is it better when they're older? And have you seen any pushback from adult children in your forays around parenting?
Well, I think it's probably easier when they're older. I mean, because now my daughters accept. Actually, they're encouraging me to get married again. So,
Really?
yeah. So I think they're older. They accept.
Their mama's pushing him off, so she'll leave her alone.
They accept it. In fact, my daughter, my older one, she was actually, asking around. She asked somebody she knew, like if he knew someone for me, and she actually set me up with someone.
Get out of here! It's like, who is this? Who is this child? Is this my daughter?
Yeah. So they want me to get married again. So, but it's been a number of years, so they accepted it. But I'm just saying, at the beginning, they still think they can. I mean, the whole situation is painful for them, and they feel, well, we got to get, if we're going to get our parents back together again, we got to get rid of this other woman, and it wasn't fun.
Man, they were determined. What do you think, Lori? Older, younger, or adults?
I think younger, but then you're also going to experience those hurdles when they turn into teenagers. I mean, you can't expect that not to happen. But, we see people all the time that'll have great relationships with their stepkids straight off the bat. And you ask them, well, how old was the stepkid, when you met them and became blended? And they'll say 2, 3. Well, that's because it's a child. They learn to love the person that gives them a hug or helps them with their boo-boo or whatnot. Not a 9-year-old that's thinking, I don't know who the crap you are coming in here telling me what you're going to do in my house that I was raised in.
Gotcha.
And then the adults, we do see a good bit of, especially girls, and I'm not trying to bash girls.
No, I'm. That's why I asked the question, because I had a feeling that's what you were gonna say.
Yeah, those older girls, and it's she's just after my daddy's money, or just whatever. It's the stepmom thing, and I think that depending on the maturity level of the adult and whether they were a princess growing up or something, then that's definitely going to affect it.
Ugh. Unbelievable.
No, like you said, we can talk for hours about this stuff.
It's just kind of, it is a big concern, like I said, because, just looking at so many single parent homes, and the people just are making so many different mistakes with them. And I thought this would be a fabulous topic to bring in some experts to talk about, on how people could navigate these rocky roads with, to be successful on the other end. But are there any things that you've seen that are recurring issues, or things that people should be talking about, but you've seen repeatedly that they do not? Do you have, either of you have any ideas on that? Things that they should be talking about, but they're not for some reason.
Well, I think really they need to talk about everything, just like Lori pointed out. I think, people, even in a nuclear family, people get married, they assume it's just going to work. They assume how they want things to be is the other person is going to go along with that, because they just assume that. So I think the same thing happens in blended families, that they assume, well, this is going to work. We're going to be one big happy family, and it's like, I think, like the things that you talked about, Lori, are right on. Like, there's all these issues. You got to be defined in your roles. Like, and I agree with you. Really, a step parent should be your best friend, and realize, they have a mother, they have a father. You just be their best friend, and then that, they'll like you, or they're more likely to like you.
They'll tolerate you.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, it's important for the woman not to come in all gung-ho trying to take over. It's important for the man to not be gung-ho trying to push everything on the woman. My husband will tell you, he thought, okay, she automatically steps into the motherly role. Right. I mean, he didn't have any idea that this was going to backfire, like I didn't.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, you just don't think about it.
So then I would assume then, so one of the tips for people, because I want to make sure they get this, that you recommended, is that the birth parent be the parent. The
Right.
other person is the friend. I want everybody to understand that, because there's this big issue in the, well, at least I know it's for a fact, it's in the Black community. A lot of these guys feel like if they come in and they're playing the stepfather role, that they should have the right to discipline the child, which in this instance means putting their hands on the kid, spanking the kid's butt and all this stuff. And I'm not a fan of men doing anything of the sort, because they don't know their own strength, and they were more likely to injure a child than they are to really discipline it. I don't like that plan at all. But it's a big fight. It's a big battle.
And it's not their kid, so they don't have that love for that child to stop them if they're mad, or to hold them back from being too aggressive. You know, I grew up, back in the day, and my mama, she would beat you with whatever she could get her hand on. The pink hairbrush was the worst. I mean, she'd be in jail right now. She's lucky. She was born in a different time. But I don't want my husband spanking my kid. I don't even want him telling my kid not to do something, because in reality, he wouldn't stop his own kids from doing it. When they're not your kids, there's so many different aspects of it, because they don't aggravate you as much when they're your kids. You don't.
Oh,
Yeah. You don't focus on every breath they take that's pointed in the wrong direction. There's just so much involved in it that you've got to realize you can't expect somebody to love and to parent your kid straight off the bat. And your job as a parent doesn't stop just because there's another person in the house.
okay. What do you say, Elliot, about that?
Well, I think you raised some important points, but I think, we think of the father as a disciplinarian, but really a father's job is really to be a role model of what a man should be. And a stepfather can still be that. He can show how a man treats a woman, like show his sons or his stepsons, both of them, and his stepdaughters and his daughters, what a man should be. A man should be a gentleman, how a man should treat a woman, so she knows that that's the way she should be treated. And really, see, what I wrote about in my book is, a father's job is like to teach his children how to live in this world, how to go out into the world and be successful, how to have self-confidence, and go out and have the whole world. I tell people that the whole world would put your kids down. It's your job to build them up, and whether it's your own children or your stepchildren, you can still be that kind of man to those children. And then you're really giving them a gift, and being a disciplinarian who hits the kids, like I don't know, I thought that's passe now.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, this is a big point of discussion online in some online forums that I've been in. I just observed. I wasn't really there to make any comments, but I did want to bring that up and pose that question to you and get your views on it. My personal ones is don't touch my child or you die. That's
Exactly.
that's just pretty much my bottom line. If I'm not beating on her, then what makes you think you're going to be doing that? You're out of your mind. So, with my dad, I know my brothers were horrible people. They did some of the worst things you could ever imagine. And luckily, my oldest brother, if it was not for my father, he probably would have been in San Quentin. Because he just, I don't know, we were all raised the same, but he just decided to go left and everybody else went right. And so my dad had to bring him back in line. But my father, I think I got one spanking from him in my entire life. But other than that, all he had to do was tell me that I disappointed him. Oh my God. I was like this little Chicken Little, the sky is falling. I just was depressed. I couldn't stop crying. It was just awful. I mean, just thinking about it now, I get choked up.
Girl, let me tell you, my daddy didn't even have to say anything. He could wiggle his toe. That lazy boy kicked out and that toe start wiggling. I just knew. And like you said, it just rips your heart out. You feel like you've murdered somebody or something. I mean, it's horrible. It's horrible. But yeah.
So that's my point. That's how important a father is, and a father has to be that role model and to inspire his children to be decent people. Like I talked about that girlfriend. I failed to teach them how to treat this woman respectfully. But that's really my job, is to teach them how to go out in the world and be decent human beings, and you can do that with your stepchildren or or your regular children, your own children. That's our job. That's our job. And what I write about in my book, and that mistake that often happens is a lot of, and I know a lot of men like this, they'll say, well, you know, she's the mother. She knows more about raising children. I'll just bring in the money. And then I said, you know what?
Yeah.
That's part of your job. You're missing out the most important part of your job. They need you. They really
Exactly.
need you to teach them how to be decent human beings, to go out in the world and succeed as people. Have people that like them. I know they know that people will like them because they know how to behave properly in the world.
I agree. What do you have to say, Lori?
Oh, I definitely agree. One of the things that, like I said, I didn't want to date anybody that didn't have kids because they wouldn't understand what being a parent was like. And one of the reasons that I was so attracted to my husband, because he was an awesome dad. I mean, he had his kids, I think when we first got married, it was 11 out of 14 days. How many men do you know that fight or don't even fight, but want their kids 11 out of 14 days? Usually it's the other way around. And so I was really impressed with that. And for the most part, you know, his kids were very respectful until we got married and they wanted to kill me and stuff. And and then it wasn't as disrespectful as a lot of things I've seen. It was just more just not listening to me or going, you know, just things like that, little things. But my husband is a great role model for my son. And he doesn't parent him. Now, if he knows that I'm about to flip out and cut up like Cheetah, then he will tell Jackson, my son, he'll say, that's enough, quit pushing her buttons, you know, because he's trying to save my son and keep me out of jail.
His life. That's so funny.
Yeah.
Well, this has been great, and I want to give each one of you an opportunity to, you know, kind of sum things up on this topic for people. Maybe send them away with some ideas to think about when they go out on their next date and they're looking for, you know, the relationship is going a little, you know, it's going a distance, and that's something that may be on the horizon. So I would like each of you to, you know, maybe send out a closing comment or two, and be sure to tell our viewers where they can find out more information about you.
Well, as I said, the most important thing is really, you know, just see how the other person interacts with your children and how you interact with their children, and do it early so you don't feel like you've invested 6 months. And remember, as a father, as your job is really to teach them to be decent human beings, to be a role model. And that's the most important thing. And that's really what I wrote this book about. Let me just see where my book has gone. Here it is. It's Being the Strong Man a Woman Wants, Timeless Wisdom on Being a Man. It's really all the lessons I learned. And, you know, I'm divorced, and I realized I had to learn. First you blame the other person, then you say, what do I have to learn from all this? And these are the lessons that I learned. And it's available on Amazon and as a paperback and an ebook, and also it's also on Kobo and iBooks. And if you want to contact me, my website is www.elliottKatz.com. It's ELLIOTT. It's TTKATZ.com. And if you have comments, please contact me, or questions. Be happy to.
And I will link to both websites in the show description below the video once I put it up. Okay, Lori, what's your story?
Okay. First of all, I'm going to order Elliot's book. I'm going to use that because I know that there's a lot of information in there that is relevant to what we're doing as well. And like I said, I'd love to have both of you on our podcast. And, you know, the tips that I would say from being a stepmom: take things slow. Don't rush things. Don't try to force the relationship to be like a nuclear family or like you think it should. Lower your expectations. It's okay not to have any expectations. Create your own role. Don't feel like you've got to step in and be super mom or super dad. You know, like I said, treat them like a friend's kids, but definitely pay attention to any red flags. It really concerns me what you were talking about, the kids being abused by these men, and it just makes me sick when I think about it. But there are signs. You know when somebody gets mad because the mustard cap's not on and they throw it across the room, that you probably don't want to leave your crying kid with them.
Right.
You know, pay attention. And, you know, you might love somebody, but those red flags are there for a reason, and it's because those will hurt you or your child in the future, and you've got to recognize them and pay attention to them, and don't just blow them off.
Okay. Well, you two were fabulous, and thank you for hanging with me
Thank
through
you.
all those technical difficulties. What a nightmare. But
Oh,
that's
wait
all
a
right.
minute.
See, I think fast on my feet.
Yep. I forgot to tell you where you can find me. It's Lori at nachokids.com is my email, and it's LORI at nacho, NACHOKIDS.com, and our website is nachokids.com.
Isn't that the cutest name you've ever heard in your life? I
They are
just love
Nacho
it.
Kids.
When she wrote me, I said, "Oh, this is so cute. I have to see what she's talking about." I just started laughing. I just thought it was funny.
Girl,
But I
you
really
have to laugh.
appreciate you coming on and sharing your experience and wisdom with my channel viewers. I really, really appreciate it. And I thank you, and I will be in touch.
Sounds
Okay,
great.
thank you, Laura.
Okay.
Thank you.
See you later.
Deborah.
Bye-bye.
See you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.